Good evening, friends. Thank you for joining us here at Bloomingdale's On Screen. I am Kelley Carter, the Home Fashion Director. If you've been here before, you know we want to hear from you throughout. If you are new, the chat is where you're going to drop your comments, questions, deep secrets, because we're all friends here. We're streaming live from our Hestan shop at our 59th Street store in New York. Tonight, we're excited to take a virtual trip to San Francisco for an evening of Italian cuisine. So joining us live from SPQR in San Francisco, we have athlete, Michelin star chef, and cookbook author, Matthew Accarrino. Welcome, Matthew.
Hi, Kelley. Hi, everybody. What a pleasure to be on Bloomingdale's On Screen and spend the night with all of the viewers out there.
Thank you for having us at SPQR. So your culinary style draws inspiration from your Italian heritage, personal experience, classical training, but I'd love to hear more about what inspired you to pursue a culinary career.
Yeah, Kelley, actually, this is sort of my second job, believe it or not. My first job was being an athlete and in my early, teenage and early 20s. And actually, I had a bone tumor in my right leg. And when my leg broke with that, didn't walk for a couple of years, but I could stand and cook. And being an athlete, I was already taking great care of my diet and learning to cook myself, and had worked in restaurants. So it was just something that was natural. I think it was my second passion that became my first passion. And as I went into every professional kitchen, everyone always said to me, you're good at this, you should keep going, which is what people had said to me about bike racing. So I was happy to be where I am today. And actually I'm back to athletics and bike racing today, alongside being a Michelin star chef. So, as people say, I'm living the dream.
Love that. It's so impressive how you're able to combine and pursue both your passions. So tell me what SPQR stands for.
Sure. SPQR stands for Senatus Populesque Romanus, the long Latin phrase. The Roman Empire once spanned all the way from England to Asia. And the way I've always viewed what we called the restaurant was that I could incorporate ingredients, cooking Italian food, but in California. That meant that I could be cognizant of what we have here in California, maybe what's further north of here or further south, and bring in those. So we cook with huila coche in the summertime, which is traditionally a Mexican ingredient. It grows on corn as a fungus. And so we do a beautiful corn ravioli in the restaurant, and it's finished with a huila coche butter, and that's one of our sort of signature dishes that we do in the summertime. Not exactly Italian, but to me, Italian food has always been great ingredients, great technique, and a real reverence for seasonality. And that's why it's great to be cooking in California, because we have all those things in spades.
I love that, Cali Italian. Okay,
That's
so tell me more about the dish you're going to be preparing tonight.
So when I thought about what I would make tonight, I wanted to really do something that was evocative of what I might do maybe at home. People always ask chefs a couple of questions that we always get asked. One is, where do we eat? And the usual answer for that is at our house, because we work long hours. And I think going out is a real treat for me. And I always ask someone, is like, if you're a dentist, do you go to the dentist office on your day off? They don't. And then
that's interesting.
Another good question they always ask is, what's your signature dish? And I always tell people the answer to that one is, we don't get to choose. The customers choose where our signature dishes are. But what I wanted to do was just do something that I would make at home. What do chefs make at home? We make things, they always say, like grilled cheese, cereal. I mean, stuff like that. When we actually cook at home, we cook things that are simple. So I'm going to use one of the Hestan pans tonight. It's kind of a 5-quart. This is the Nano Bond pan, and it really sears things beautifully. And we're going to do a seared chicken that I'm going to start now. I'm actually taking this off, and then we'll do some mushrooms, and then eventually we'll make a risotto, and everything's going to happen in one pan. And believe me, there's the dishwasher at my house is me, so it has to be easy to clean up. So.
You're right. Okay.
Exactly. Right. So I realize what a luxury it is when we're in the restaurant. We have all these dishwashers here to help clean up after us. And I think it's one of the things you learn straight away in a professional kitchen is how to work efficiently and economically. And speaking of which, I wanted to highlight something because we're going to use chicken legs tonight. And actually, I have a whole chicken right here in front of me, and I've started to take the legs off And what we're going to do is do a little technique. I noticed we make a lot of chicken for staff meal in the restaurant. Nobody ever wants to eat the pieces that have bones in them. I think because it seems like it's difficult. I like chicken without bones, but I want to be able to do something with the dark meat of the chicken, which is what's here. So firstly, we start with the chicken leg here. And
Okay.
cutting chicken and being able to separate this efficiently is all about articulating where this is and seeing exactly where the joint is, and then you can get right through. And you use the back of your hand, push through, comes in one easy motion because there's soft cartilage there and you can get that separated. Once I have that separated, I'm going to repeat that same trick on the knuckle, the back of my hand, and I go straight through.
I've never seen anyone take that off.
So, and you're going to see when this is a finished dish, because I did that, this will actually cook and it'll shrink down and it'll look like a beautiful little Frenched drumstick. So it's this little trick. It only takes a second to go through here. And now you've got that. All right.
I love that. A French drumstick sounds so chic.
There you go. Exactly. And this is home chic, right? So now I've got this little knuckle, and actually these little knuckles where all the cartilage is, that's where when we make stock, that's where all the gelatin comes from. That's where all the flavor comes from. So I actually have a pot of stock here I'm going to add to it that I started. So now I've got a couple of drumsticks, and then comes the thigh. The thigh is delicious meat, but it has a bone in it. And so I'm going to line it up where I've got the bone right here. I'm going to take my knife, and the skin side is down, and cut on one side, turn it around, cut on the other side. Now, I know I'm very good at this, but I'm supposed to be. But so now I've got the bone exposed here. You can kind of see up close there, I think. I'm gonna put
I have a question from the audience. Did you brine the chicken before?
No. And brining will put flavor into the chicken, but it's not necessary for the dish that we're going to do.
Okay.
Typically, if you're going to whole roast a chicken, what brining does is it changes the salt structure of the chicken or the moisture structure in the chicken, and makes the chicken or the meat that is brined hang on to moisture longer, so it'll stay juicy. But what we're going to do is a braised method here today, and so it'll be a wet cooking method. We don't have to worry about that kind of drying out happening. Also, using the dark meat has a little more richness to it, and it's actually going to play into that. And that's exactly why we're not using the breast meat, because that could dry out. So now I've got this bone loose.
Dark meat.
Me too. So here's the drumstick bone cleanly out, super easy. Okay, and so now this becomes a boneless piece of meat, which is amazing. I'll do it really quickly to this one, because we're going to have, this is 4 chicken legs for this recipe.
Okay.
And I've got my pan over here preheated, and I'm going to put some olive oil in the pan and season the chicken, and then we'll start searing it. So
okay. So while you're doing that, we have a poll question for our viewers at home, and I will have that question in 1 second. Okay. Do you make risotto at home, or do you save it for a night out?
I make risotto at home. I'm encouraging them to make risotto at home.
You have to teach us how to not have crunchy risotto. I'm speaking from experience.
We're on our way there now.
Okay. I'm going to make it at home, and then I'll let you know after.
Okay. So I'm going to go in. Pan's preheated. There we go. Sizzle, sizzle.
Oh, see, everyone's like me. 65%. They save it for the pros. They don't make it at home. They save it for the pros. It's so intimidating. If you watch Master Chef,
this recipe
the risotto kills them. Everyone gets killed because they try to make a risotto.
Well, so hopefully by the end of this, you'll be more comfortable. Because
I'm very excited for this.
Fairly simple. Okay, hang on 1 second.
Okay.
I'm back. All right, so the chicken is searing. And actually this pan, I've noticed using it, typically I'm actually cooking on portable burners, which is typically would never have enough firepower to sort of get done what we want to get done. It's more akin to what many people have at home. The one thing about a restaurant stove is we have a lot more BTUs, or a lot more gas coming through the pipe that gives us a lot better ability to get things brown in pans. And this pan actually seems to caramelize things much easier with lower heat. And I think it's because the pan retains so much of the heat from the burner. So we're getting color on all the sides as we go here, and I'm gonna start cutting the onions now for the risotto. Onions are peeled, they're cut in half. I'm gonna take my knife.
Okay.
They teach you this one early on in cooking school. Don't cut like this because you'll cut yourself. So you watch a chef, and the chef has this claw, and the knife is behind your fingers. So now, if I cut myself
Oh,
right
I've
now,
seen that.
Okay.
And I've tried to do that, but I feel like it's like very slippery.
Well, so my knife is actually gliding across my knuckle. And so now I'm all the way straight through. Maybe we only need two. Do it again. Straight through. And as I get to the end, of course, I'm going to slightly slow down. And you'll see a lot of people cut this way. I prefer not to. So I'm just going to go straight through with my knife.
That looks like a trip to the ER if you cut that way. Like, not fun.
Yeah, you have to make
Andrew from the audience, he wants to know, what level of heat are you using to sear?
So right now I'm on medium heat, which again, you'd think that this would need all the way to high heat, but it actually doesn't. It's actually picking up really a lot of color now. If I could pull one of these up, Andrew, we'll see where we already are in a really short period of time.
Ooh, very nice. Is that this pan that I have right here?
Yes,
This is the one. Okay. But I'm not in the kitchen, so I will not be able to cook or eat whatever he's making, guys, just like you.
I'm going to really try to get as much color on the skin on the thigh. And I really won't turn the thigh over, because what we're trying to do is caramelize and get crispy chicken skin. So I won't turn those over, but the drumstick pieces I am turning over slightly.
Okay.
Now I've got some onions. Go ahead.
Well, I have another question. Andrew has another question, actually. He also wants to know, what brand of portable burner are you using?
This one says Iwatani. It's a pretty common one. That's why I chose it. It's one that we use when we do, sometimes catering events or those things. But they're powered by a butane canister, so it's a pretty standard, common burner.
Okay.
Good questions, Andrew.
I know. Andrew, are you a chef?
I wonder if he is. Certainly a cook. So now I'm going to cut some mushrooms. We'll check on the chicken here and maybe give it another turn.
What kind of mushrooms are those?
We've got a mix of mushrooms here, some shiitakes, some hen of the woods, or maitakes, or that's this guy. That's the hen of the woods.
Oh yeah, I like that one.
The trumpet royale. That's a big meaty mushroom.
Oh, I love that one.
And then these shiitakes are really beautiful. They're huge right now, massive.
I base everything on looks. I love the way mushrooms look.
So you could also use any mushrooms that you had. I mean, there are beautiful mushrooms like chanterelles. So look at, man, color is amazing. So I would say that these
oh, that's beautiful.
About done. Yeah, I mean and that took no time at all. I mean, this is so crispy. It's like knocking on the door. I'm gonna pull those guys out, leave these in for another minute while I finish cutting the mushrooms. And then actually I'm gonna remove the fat, and we're gonna go in with the mushrooms.
I'm really excited. That looks so delicious. I actually was afraid to come here on an empty stomach, because I'm usually running from a meeting straight to a cooking demo. So I'm watching and I'm starving, but today I ate something because I knew today was going to do me in. Because I love risotto. I wish you could too.
Now I just put a little butter and some herbs in here. I'm going to roll it around. And that's just going to release the flavor, along with a piece of garlic. Release the flavor. I'm going to add these to my plate. Remember, we're doing a one-pot meal, so
right.
No
and you don't have to you don't have to clean the pot between, right? Between each step.
I would never make a recipe where we had to do that.
Okay,
that'd be way too much work. Now I'm going to pour the hot fat over here and let it rest. And I'm going to put some fresh olive oil in here. We're gonna go right in with our mushrooms. So we've got the shiitakes, trumpets, the hen of the woods.
I have a question from Shelley. Shelley wants to
Yes.
know what the heat on the portable burner equates to on a stovetop.
So the heat on these portable burners, which is why I chose to do it on this, I have a whole stove behind me, and I wanted to do it here because this equates to what most of us have at home on a standard stove. And so I wanted to prove to all of you that this was possible in your home kitchen. Because
thank you.
usually in a restaurant, we're always talking about how much more firepower we have on our stoves. Because, you know, I think we have, a typical home has less than 50,000 BTUs going into it, and we have something like 1 million coming into the restaurant.
Wow.
So we have a lot. Okay, and you can
That
see the
sounds
pan
like
has
a lot.
retained so much heat that I'm actually going to add a little bit of butter in here, and these mushrooms are just going to sear so quickly. I'm going to repeat that trick with a clove of garlic as well. Smash it. Maybe we'll do 2. Except this time I'm going to chop this up.
Okay.
And add this into the mushrooms. So this is got chicken. That's step 1. That's here so far. And then we've got mushrooms, step 2.
Okay.
And then we're gonna move on to rice.
Okay. So while you're doing that, can you tell me about your Michelin star? Like, how did you get it? Once you get it, is it yours forever? Or do you have to like compete for it every year, like the NBA finals? Like, what happens?
I like the yours forever idea. No, we have to get it every single year. Actually, the first year, we've had it for almost a decade at SPQR. And it's certainly not something that's easy to get. I think that I for sure cried the first year because it's such an achievement for a chef. And when I worked in Europe, I worked for a bunch of Michelin star chefs during that time. And, they were so inspirational to me. And then to be able to come back and be at SPQR, and was within the first few years of being here that we got a Michelin star and have been able to maintain it ever since. And what I've always enjoyed about Michelin is we have never known when the inspectors come through here. So really it has to be a mark of some kind of consistency for us. And we can never sort of get used to it. We have to earn it every year. And I think it's a real driver for my team. And it definitely keeps us focused on using the best ingredients, using the best products, and trying to make the best food. So you see how fast we sear the mushrooms now. I've added a little
so
salt
fast.
along the way. And I'm actually going to pull these out like we did before. So I've dirtied 2 plates, but only 1 pan.
Okay, that's fine. Plates are easy to deal with.
Right.
Pans are really annoying.
Yeah. Well, and you can see now that I've seared in here twice, and there's very little actual accumulation of anything in the bottom of the pan. So that's actually really nice for me as well. These pans clean up really, really well.
And it's so beautiful. I love this pan.
Okay,
So
now
what is
onions
that?
are in.
What pan is that exactly? Can you repeat that? I know you told
Sure,
me at the beginning.
This is from the Nanobond line.
Yeah.
And this is the 5-quart saute. So it has these straight sides. And why I chose this, most of the time when we talk about a saute pan in the restaurant kitchen, we're talking about a pan that looks actually more like this.
Oh, right. Yeah.
That's what, right? But so this pan has the straight sides. And what the difference is, well, there's really 2. One is this pan comes with a lid, and we're actually going to use that lid today. I mean, I'm sure that everyone buys cookware. And when you buy cookware, it comes with a lid. And then I wonder if anyone wants to write in maybe, what do you do with the lid? Because a lot of people don't use them really at all, cooking. And that's what this pan would be for. So this one comes with a lid, and then this straight-sided part of the pan allows it to hold much more volume of liquid. And so like we're doing a risotto here. So we'll be able to cook something that's a wet method, like a risotto or a braise inside this pan much more simply than we would in this pan. And this pan we wouldn't have a cover for.
Got it. Now, Bonnie wants to know if you can saute the onions and mushrooms together.
You can, but believe it or not, the mushrooms take a lot less time than the onions. So I always prefer to do them separately. And I also don't want to overcook the mushrooms because I'm going to add them back into the risotto later. But if you wanted to, I would suggest at that point then, if you wanted to do it in one step, chop the mushrooms more finely, and that'll work a little better for you because they'll more fully incorporate into the risotto. What I really wanted to have here was the texture of the risotto come from the mushrooms and the chicken and all those things, and then the rice just to be that creamy base. Okay, so we've got
it.
Got our onions going. Someone asked what kind of spatula. It's a Rubbermaid, but any of these. I mean, we have that one. We have this one. I got this little pink guy. They're all what you want is a high heat spatula. Did you ever leave your spatula in the pan?
Yeah, always.
And then it melts.
Yeah.
And then you throw it away.
Of course. Yes.
Spend a few bucks and get the.
Have you been spying in my kitchen? Yes, of course.
Yeah, I'm waiting for you to cook for me. This is a little chef's trick. It's porcini powder. This is much more readily available than, let's say, dried porcini that are not ground up. But this is like powdered flavor, right? So this is something I always have in my house. It's worth getting.
What does it taste like?
So this is just porcini mushrooms. Porcini is a wild mushroom, and so they sort of happen when they want to, and so that means feast or famine. So when it's feast, they preserve them all. So if they're not able to be used fresh, they dry them, they turn them into powder, they turn them into sliced mushrooms that are dried, and it has so much flavor that it's worth it to have that in your repertoire, and it's something that can just stay in your pantry like the same way salt and sugar does. Okay. Little porcini powder, that's going to give you a blast of flavor. If you don't want to use that, you certainly don't have to. Now we're starting to get really good color on these onions. So I'm going to go ahead and take some marsala. I love cooking with marsala. If you don't have marsala, I'm just going to slow it down for a second.
What exactly is marsala?
Marsala is just a fortified wine. It has some extra, I think it has a lot of additional flavor to add beyond, let's say, a white wine or red wine. I'm adding in the risotto rice.
Okay.
Okay.
This is where we really need to pay attention, guys. Not that we weren't, but now we're all in.
You'll notice that I started and I had my hot stock ready. So if you don't want to make your own chicken stock, you don't have to. You can. I mean, we typically at home, I'll save my vegetable trimmings from things like carrots and celery and onions for a week or something, a couple days, and then I'll make a little batch of stock. And then what I usually do is freeze it. I actually will have ice cube trays in my freezer that I'll freeze stock in. I don't freeze ice in there later. So once you use it for something like chicken stock or, I'll make pesto in big batches and I'll put the pesto in there and freeze it. But if you ever try to freeze ice cubes in there after that, it doesn't go so well. If you get pesto,
like a pesto vodka soda, that sounds terrible.
Yeah, it's not good. Yeah, exactly.
So
now
if
this
you
is
didn't
dry.
Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
This is dry. Now I'm just going to go in with a splash more. I'm sorry. Too many directions. Okay. So this is really step one. This is going to cook away really quickly because this pan, no matter what I'm doing to it, it's retaining its heat on medium heat. It's going really quickly. And then I'm going to step over here in my stock. And so I'm going to go right from the pot where we have the stock, which is hot. And then I'm just going to pass it through here because I've got all kinds of herbs and onions and chicken bones and whatever it is in here. So this will, a couple ladles in here. Sorry.
So you can use store-bought stock.
Yes, I was getting there. Okay. You absolutely can. I think maybe, you could say be aware of the amount of sodium that could potentially be in that store-bought stock and adjust accordingly. Although I think a lot of the better brands of pre-made stock have gotten this idea that they should have less salt in them because people are going to cook with them. And so I think there's quite a few low and reduced sodium brands out there. But, it's something I always have, a little container in my pantry of stock in case I don't have any. So I suggest you do the same. Why not?
Why not?
It's cooking easier. Okay, so a couple ladles of stock in here with the rice. I'm going to let this go. I'm actually going to put these pieces in. This piece that has, sorry, I'm getting the time off of it. This piece that has the bone in it always takes a little bit longer. And so I think it's okay. I think the recipe might not exactly say this, so everyone pay attention. You can put this in slightly earlier in the game to be sure that it gets cooked. Any meat with a bone always takes a little longer to cook than meat without a bone. So that's also part of the reason why, I mean, again, it's like you look at this, I'm ready to eat this right now.
I want that right now.
So good. Crispy chicken thighs are the best.
Definitely.
Okay. So that's going. We're going to turn it up to full steam ahead.
Okay.
It's a risotto almost universally takes about like 18 to 20 minutes. I mean, and that's why you'll see a lot of times when you go to restaurants in Italy and you order the risotto, they don't start making the risotto until you order it. So it takes like 30 minutes. And I've been with people and they're always saying, like, well, why is it taking so long? It's like, well, because they didn't even start until you asked for it. We have a method in restaurants that I've worked in, and we typically don't when we make risotto at SPQR these days, we make batches. So it's sort of like every half hour we have a batch ready, and then we can serve it for a little bit. So, but I don't like to put it on the menu either because I don't like to pre-make it. But you can take this about halfway, and then you would lay it out, and then you could go back and sort of finish it the rest of the way. And that's very common in restaurants. It's not the end of the world. You definitely have to use a good quality risotto rice to do that. It always goes back to quality and ingredients. So if you have good ingredients, good technique, good cookware, good rice, you definitely have a better end result.
Okay, well, Alan wants to know what kind of risotto rice are you using?
Well, it's funny you should ask because I've always used the same risotto rice, and I actually pull it over here. This is in the north of Italy, Accarrino. It's the best rice there is out there, and the reason why is if you get these individual grains of rice, they size them, and so if you actually get a grain of risotto rice and you look at it, there's a very bright white center, and then there's a more translucent ring around the outside. When they mill different sizes together, when they're taking the husk off the rice, if they get into that center part, that's where all the starch is. So it's like drilling a hole into it, and then when you cook it, all the starch leaks out, and the rice overcooks. But so they've done a lot. It's a very technologically astutely produced rice, and it's actually a beautiful company. It's owned by a family, and the woman who owns this company sends these bags to a women's prison in the north of Italy and allows them to make things that they sell. So they make wallets, bags, and all these things with this bag. And then they sell them. And the women that are incarcerated there get to keep the money for when they get out, which I think is really, really cool. And it's also everything that you get has a little tag on it that says Fatto in Carcere, which means made in prison on them. So it's super fun.
I love that.
Doing something for her community. So yeah, I love that rice. So, okay, now we're getting close to dry here, and I'm going to go ahead and add in the mushrooms and any of the juices there. And I'm actually going to add in, pull the time off of here. I'm going to add in this chicken and nestle it. I won't push the crispy skin, although it won't stay exotically crispy, but it will be pretty crispy here. And I'm going to put some of this
adding the
juice in
entire chicken?
Yep, so it's all in there now, and all the juices that were on the plate that had accumulated from the chicken are all in there. Okay, and then I'm going to step over here and put the second addition of stock in. Okay, and you will have noticed, actually, well, maybe, no, you may not have noticed, but I do what we call seasoning in stages. So constantly I have this little bowl of salt, and so I season the chicken, I season the mushrooms, I season the rice. Now I'm going to season it again. This maybe takes a little practice, but I'm used to. You notice I haven't tasted it yet. But I'm reasonably confident in my skills. So okay. I think we'll be good. But it's when you season something in stages, and if you wouldn't want to try this, but if you did, you'd see. So cook a pot of beans. Don't add any salt to it, and then taste it at the end. Then it won't taste very good. And add as much salt as you can bear to it, and see if the beans take that salt, and they won't. The same thing with potatoes, the same thing with all these things. So it's difficult with beans because If you season them too early, they'll remain tougher. So you have to know when to season them, which is about 3/4 of the way through being cooked. But especially potatoes, it just doesn't take it. It's an osmosis thing. It's a complicated science thing. But so it's good to always just season your food in stages, and that allows all the flavors to get together and all the salinity to get together into all the things, and you'll have much better tasting food. I'm going to cover this. Remember, I promised we would use the lid. Right?
I love the lid.
Okay, I'm going to cover it. So
I have questions.
Okay, I'm going to cut some sugar snap peas while we talk about questions. Okay.
All right. How many cups of stock and how many cups of rice were added to the pan?
So rice is about 300 grams. We do it by weight, but I would say it's about 1.5 cups. And then stock, I've done, that's a 4-ounce ladle. So right now I'm 16 ounces of stock in there, and I may add just a touch more. And I'll show you how to check risotto rice for doneness here in a minute. I think we need a couple of minutes.
We do need to know that.
Of course, and because that's how you're going to know when it's showtime, and that's the thing. It'll take about 18 minutes from start to finish, give or take. But all food, and I know this so well from being in a restaurant kitchen, is a living thing. So when we make pastas, and they hit a plate, that pasta, when I put it on a plate in the kitchen, and that pasta 10 minutes later is not the same pasta. And that's why you'll get some, really is going. I'm picking on the Italian restaurants today, but you go to Italy and there's certain things, and it's like, the cacio pepe, you have to eat it now. It's not good in 5 minutes, or the carbonara, those kind of things. And so,
those are my two favorites.
Yeah, go to Rome and have a cacio pepe, and sit it on the table for 10 minutes. Don't touch it.
I will not do that.
The waiter will come over after 8 minutes and ask you if you're okay. Yeah, are you okay?
Okay, so
okay.
All right. I have another question.
Okay, I see him firing in there.
I know, the people want to know what you know, Chef Matthew, as do I.
A+ to the audience today. A+.
Yes. What pans are a must-have in the kitchen?
It's funny. I was talking to the Hestan people, and I was saying, here's all the pans that I think we should have, you should have in the kitchen. And I had all my opinions, right? And they said, yeah, you just described our 10-piece set. I guess they already thought of it. Yeah, I guess they already thought of it.
Hestan 10-piece set. That's what you need in your kitchen. Here.
That's right.
Oh, I can see my hands, guys. Okay.
Yeah, but I mean, so if you leave that up for a second, you've got two sizes of what I would call a saute pan or a skillet to cook in. So that's going to allow you to brown.
Oh, can we show that?
Yeah, so yeah, exactly. Those are two different size meals. I mean, that's what different size pans are for. Maybe a larger, if you wanted to cook a whole, like a brick roasted chicken kind of thing and cook it all flat, you might need the bigger skillet there. Then you've got it looks like a 2-quart or a 3-quart and maybe a 5-quart saucepan that are off to the the left. Exactly. And so those are your things for like reheating soup, for boiling small amounts of liquid, for those kind of things. The 8-quart pot, which is what I made the stock in today, which is the big pot in that set, is an absolute workhorse.
This one, that one.
That one, yeah, is an absolute workhorse. It's like, if you want to boil and cook like a couple pounds of pasta or make a big batch of stock, or that's what you need. And so I have one of those at home for sure. And then finally you get that this what they call the skillet, which is right in front there. That's our hero today. And that one just allows you. Yeah, that's your one pot meal hero. So and all of these are oven to table. So especially that one for me with the lid. Put the lid on it. You could braise something in the oven. You could be braising short ribs in there. So you could sear them, put the vegetables, put the stock, put the short ribs, put the lid, put it in the oven, low, 200 degrees, come back 2 hours later, 3 hours later, and check the doneness.
I love oven to table. More questions.
And if you're not cooking for as big of a crowd as I am anticipating, I'm probably going to just unlock the door and let everybody in after this. They do make this in a 3.5-quart, which is slightly smaller. So and that's the one in the set. They're telling us.
Okay, good to know.
So if you want to cook for a crowd, get the 5-quart. I'm going to add the sugar snap peas. Go with the questions.
Okay. Sherry wants to know, are the snap peas fresh?
Yes. But Sherry, I'm so glad you asked, because I've got some frozen peas right here, and people are always, I love frozen peas. I always have them in my freezer at home. And what happens is they actually go out to the field with what is called a refractometer. Same thing they use to check the sugar level in grapes before they harvest them to make wine. By the way, Hestan also makes wine. And they check the sugar. When the sugar is absolutely perfect, they literally pick the peas right then and there. And they go from being in the field to being frozen in an hour. I've seen it. I've been to the farms to see this happen. It is amazing. So this pea is absolutely perfect from a sugar content, and then it's preserved in your freezer. So if you're going to add it to something like I'm going to add it here and just sprinkle a little bit on top, or we'll use them when we're making purees, it's always ready to go. And you don't have to go to the farmer's market and pick those up. Sugar snap peas, I think, are a bit more readily available, and they're called sugar snap peas because they are always sweet. Sometimes it's a bit of a gamble with English peas that you need to shell and find in the market. And I would always advise you, when you're at the farmer's market, before you buy those peas, ask them if you can, should always ask first, because some farmers don't like this, but ask if you could pop one open and taste them and see, because if they're starchy, there's nothing really for you to do with them. They're not great.
Okay, that's good to know. I have more questions.
Okay.
What brand of porcini powder? What kind of salt? This is from the audience. I want to know what kind of butter do you use?
Okay, great. Well, we use, let's go with butter first. We use an 82% butter from here in Northern California because there is still a reasonable sized dairy industry here in Northern California. And certainly we're all about using California ingredients. So that's the butter one. Salt, we always use kosher salt. Kosher salt's one of those things, it has a coarse grain to it that allows you to feel the salt going in. And so for me, remember I said I hadn't tasted this yet, and I was pretty sure because I know, my fingers know. It was funny, I was making waffles at home this morning, and I have one of these fancy waffle makers that it has a timer that goes off. And I sat there with my girlfriend, and I like got up and I started, because we put the waffles in and then I'll go sit down on the couch. And I got up and she goes, "Where are you going?" I said, "The waffles are done." 2 seconds later, the waffle thing went off. She said, "How do you know that?" I said, "I have a timer in my head." You know, so just like that, it's important with your fingers, right? So the salt, you get really used to it. But I will say, for finishing salt, we do prefer something called Jacobsen salt, which comes from a good friend of mine, actually a former bike racer, who's up in Portland, Ben Jacobsen. He makes a beautiful sea salt from Netarts Bay in Oregon. But it's similar to the Malden flake salt you find that comes out of England.
Oh, I have that salt.
What was the other question? There was one other question. Butter, salt.
Butter, salt, porcini.
Oh, porcini powder. So we buy a lot of our truffles and dried mushroom products from a company called Urbani Truffles. And they actually have a headquarters in New York City, where you are, Kelley. Actually, not far from you at Bloomingdale's there.
Where? I like truffles.
Just a little further up the west side.
Okay.
But so we buy fresh truffles from them, but we also buy their products. They do have a fairly robust online store, so anybody could go and check those out. And they do sell those items, and that is a good quality porcini powder.
Okay. So. Do you defrost the frozen peas? This is what Rodney wants to know. And any tips for using them at home?
So frozen peas, consider them already cooked. So they're ready to use. So you can keep them frozen till the very last second and then add them to something hot. If you wanted to use them maybe to put on top of a salad or something, I would probably run them under hot water and then kind of drain them really well if you were going to do something like that. But I typically use them when I'm cooking with them. So it would be something like where I added them in here, and they were frozen when I added them in. And they'll be fine. They'll cook straight through. But they're essentially cooked and frozen in that process of harvesting. So
okay. One more question.
If you don't like peas, use lima beans. Lima beans are another good freezer staple item. I don't recommend all frozen vegetables, but I would say those are two that I do.
Okay. Do you ever use bone marrow in your risotto?
Ooh, that's a good one. Yes, I do. I love bone marrow. It's definitely a specialty item and can be an acquired taste. I'm going to add a couple cubes of butter here instead of bone marrow. But bone marrow here would be delicious. And if you did a risotto with braised beef and finished it with bone marrow. But I mean, again, bone marrow is that really unctuous, fatty, delicious flavor that has all these really high notes for flavor, just like butter does.
Yeah, I love butter and bone marrow.
Exactly.
Andrew has another question. Andrew, you must be a chef. tell us. Andrew says, don't you have to stir risotto to maximize starch concentration?
Not if you use good rice, and you're going to see in a second. Actually, Andrew, I'll pull it up here, because if you see, it's nice and creamy, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm not having to do anything to coax that starch off that rice. Certainly, if you want it to be exorbitantly creamy, you can do that and stir it. But to make a dish like what we're making here, not necessary. So you could see. Actually, I'll pull it up. Like that's still very creamy right there.
Yes.
So,
That
but
looks
Andrew,
so
if you want to stir, Andrew, I support your stirring.
Okay, Andrew, do you stir as much as you want?
I'm adding just a touch more stock here, but we're basically done. I've got some pea shoots that I'm going to tear, put over the top. And remember, I said this was oven to table, so
Right.
perhaps I'll.
Okay, so if you're like vegetarian,
yes,
and you don't want to use chicken, what can you
correct.
use?
So you can just omit the chicken, obviously, and then use vegetable stock. If you wanted to add something, I mean, I like cooking with something like tofu. You could do a firm tofu and do something and sear that in the pan and then add that back in. Guess what? It doesn't need any salt. It's not over salted, but it doesn't need any. I'm just saying
Perfection. I love it.
Yeah, I'm a perfectionist. And then I got some fine pea shoots here. And we're basically done. I'm going to shut it off. And then this could rest like this for a few minutes. You could finish it with a little more cheese if you wanted to. I think I might.
I love that.
And a little pinch of black pepper. But what's nice is this pan, and I was moving it around before, nothing is stuck to the bottom of this pan. I don't know how they do it, how they make it so these pans don't stick. I think it has something to do with how tightly woven the molecules are in the metal, but it's basically a non-stick pan. Everything's going to move freely in here. I could put the lid on here and transfer this to the table, no problem. So this is an oven to table dish like this with a little bit of extra moisture that I just put in there. This is probably
Beautiful.
good to sit there for, sort of another 5 minutes, which in my world, if I go and take this to the table, and I'm going to just pop this off the.
I wish you could bring this to my table right here.
I wish I could too. And I'm going to move my burner out of the way. Sorry, I just left.
No, it's fine. We know you're still there.
Okay, I'm back. Yeah, and that's really it. And that's the simplicity of the whole thing. And this is a bit of an understanding of the riff on a risotto technique. Like, yes, we didn't stir it obsessively, as is. There are a lot of wives' tales, as they say. I don't know if that's a great thing to say, but there's a lot of dogmatic talking in cookery. If it tastes good, you won. You don't have to worry about everybody's rules. The only stuff I always try to tell people about is things that I think make it easier. But you don't have to, it's like the old story with the ham. You ever hear, like, you go to grandma's house?
I've never heard the story about the ham. Please tell us.
Okay, so grandma used to make this ham, and a third of it was always cut off. And so then, grandma's not around anymore, and so we keep making the ham, and we cut a third of the ham off, and then we put it in the oven, and then we, why do you cut the third off? Well, because grandma's oven couldn't fit the whole ham.
That's hilarious.
What's the point, right? So, but this is like, well, don't do something because somebody told you to. Do something because it makes sense. So I always try to share cooking tips and information because they make sense. This is delicious.
Thank you. Can you give us one more look?
If you look, I can move this off here.
Yes.
Still nice and creamy.
Ooh.
All right, we've got our chicken. All the chicken's perfectly cooked. This goes oven to table, no problem. Probably gives you enough for some leftovers, depending on how many people, but I think this easily serves 4 or 6.
I'd love that. I'm going to try that at home.
So,
well, thank you so much, Chef. I wish you could pass this through the monitor, but that technology has not been invented yet. I hope Elon Musk gets on it. I have to go home and now make risotto and find porcini powder and everything. And thank you all for joining us. And don't forget all the products featured today during the event are available at select Bloomingdale stores and on bloomingdales.com. And also, now through May 10th, enjoy special savings on most Hestan cookware. And for those of you who are inspired to, keep an eye out for our post-event email, and I'll have like a shoppable lookbook and tonight's featured products and Chef Matthew's braised chicken, mushroom, and snap pea risotto recipe. Thank you again. Good night.
Thank you.